Is it better? You just wanted me to look shorter, didn't you?
Always.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine.
Whether you've been married 1 or 20 plus years, at some point, you realized you were married into crazy.
And that's what our podcast is all about. We offer love, laughter, and a dose of reality as we unpack this crazy thing called marriage.
So sit back, relax, and get your ear hustle on. It's time to start the conversation.
All right, let's go.
All right, let's go. Episode 79 of the Married into Crazy podcast with Snooks and Lovey. I am Lovey.
I am Snooks.
And we want to welcome everybody back. You have a lot of choices to make when you're listening on your commute or gardening or on your walk or just sitting in your living room. All the different things that you're doing. We're very honored and humbled that you would spend time with us on the podcast. So we want to let you know that this is interesting. It's getting closer and closer and closer to that 100th episode.
Ooh,
which I have
so exciting.
We have no idea what we're going to do on that one, but there's a lot of great topics that have been coming in from.
We're going to have cake.
We're going to have cake?
Yeah, a little cake. It says Happy 100.
Okay.
And we're going to eat it on air.
I'm going to let you eat it on air because I'm trying to hit some goals. We're going to Jamaica in a year, so cake is not getting me there. But no, it's nice. We had some people actually write in just recently that I thought was kind of cool, gave us a couple of ideas, a spin on a conversation we had earlier regarding right around the Valentine's Day where we're talking about the talk that we did at the church, and we talked about Ephesians 5 and the different interpretations, if you will, depending upon when you decide to start reading or stop reading.
Yeah, right.
Proverbs 31 came up this week. One of our listeners sent a question in about a different perspective. So we're definitely going to touch bases on that. Not tonight, but at a different time. So we are thankful for the ideas. We do read everything that you send to us.
Yes, we do.
And so she's so funny. She's just waiting. As soon as I stop talking, she's like, yes.
What was that? That was,
that cartoon?
No, it was, wasn't it Saturday Night Live or something? There's some skit or something. Oh, man, I can't. No. Fifth Element. With Chris Tucker. Come in, my man. And he kept talking, and he wanted him to say something, and he would only...
Oh, he wanted Corbin to say something? That's right. It's going to be popping, my man. It's going to be popping. It's going to be out there. Say something. Yes. I know what you're talking about. So those of you that have seen Fifth Element, it's my all-time favorite movie.
Well, that be
one of them.
Come on,
that and Big Trouble in Little China.
I was about to say, yes.
So I like the campy, corny films, but Big Trouble in Little China is my all-time favorite.
I don't know why.
Oh, that movie. Well, then I like Pulp Fiction too.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Really? Anyway, so you didn't tune in to listen to our movie choices and me to go off on a tangent provided by my beautiful bride.
One. We should.
No, because keep moving.
Okay. I didn't say for right now today. I'm just saying.
Let's talk about something of substance. So,
okay.
Anyway.
So yesterday was International Women's Day.
That it was.
Lovey did not say Happy Women's Day to me at all.
Because every day is Happy Women's Day.
No.
Okay, don't even get me started. See, look, every day is Mom Day. Every day is Women's Day.
Yeah, every day is Mom's Day because everyone says, Mom, where's this at? Mom, I need that. Mom, do you know, Mom?
I'm not refuting that. I'm not saying that doesn't happen.
So, anyway.
All I'm saying is there is no International Men's Day.
Because y'all don't do nothing.
we do a lot. We are the brunt of every joke.
Are you serious? Okay. I don't know.
We should get that because we don't even get luncheons. When's the last time you went to a Father's Day brunch?
Well, let's see. When I made dinner or whatever.
Right. But the hotels, the restaurants, they don't do anything.
Because you guys don't cook for us.
No, you know who cooks for us? You know who cooks for us? Us? On Father's Day? Oh, we're going to have a barbecue. Who's going to do all the barbecuing? The dads? And they're like, oh, I'm going to make mom meat. Oh, look, you know what? Oh, thank you, sir. Hey, how would you like to be? I think I would like my hamburger medium well. Oh, you sure you? So you have this conversation with? Would you like a beer? Yes, I would. Hey, why don't you go over to the? It's right over the refrigerator. I think I'll go get it myself. Thank you very much. So it's all us.
So you do it so well.
It's all us.
Okay,
So I didn't want to hear it.
First of all, because you settle for a hamburger and beer.
Because that's about all we can get.
When we go to the Mother's Day brunches, I mean, we have.
We want some shrimp. We want some, we want some champagne.
Whatever. You want
some
mimosa?
mimosas? Yes, we want the mimosa. Come on, I need some dads to check in right now.
300. I'll give y'all a couple. We put in at least 341 days. I'll give you 25 days out of the year. So we deserve all the mimosas, all the shrimp, all the prime rib, all the whatever.
See, that ain't even nothing to do with prime rib. That should be a Father's Day thing. I'm just, you know what? See, okay, fellas, don't let me hang on this. Somebody better email at snooksandlovey@gmail.com or coaching@marriedintocrazy.com. Somebody better, fellas, I need some testosterone to chime in to explain. Okay, you know what? It's been a long time since we did Team Snooks, Team Lovey. Here's the thing.
What?
Somebody, I know, you're like, what is even the topic? The topic is
I'm
dads
saying,
should get a brunch. That's Team Lovey is, yes, okay. Dads should get a brunch on Father's Day.
They do get a brunch.
No,
we
don't.
Make it.
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-mm.
You get lunch, you get breakfast, you get dinner.
There should be all kinds of commotion and chaos on Father's Day, just like there is on Mother's Day. You know what happens on Father's Day? Nothing. That's exactly what happened. What you just heard right there. That's exactly what happens on Father's Day. That's exactly what happens on Father's Day.
Breakfast,
but let's
lunch,
reel it back in. Let's reel it back in.
Brenner.
We're gonna go.
Brenner. You get Brenner.
I get Brenner.
You get breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
You know what? We would even take that.
You don't get that every day?
Not from you.
Well, not breakfast. No, you get dinner.
Or lunch.
I used to make your lunches, and then you stopped eating them. Oh,
you're right. You're right. You know what?
So Lovey would.
Taco Bell.
I would make his lunch, and he would bring it back home. You did that 2 times in a row. I'm like, oh, we can't eat this now, so throw it away. Did it again. I will throw it away.
Anyway, International Women's Day. International Women's Day. Get back on topic.
Because you know you're finna get told.
Get back on topic.
Anyway, so yesterday was International Women's Day. Happy Women's Day to me. You're not going to say nothing.
Get back on topic.
That is on topic.
Oh, you know what? To my mother-in-law, I like to wish her a happy International Women's Day.
Women's Day.
To my stepmom, I want to wish her a happy International Women's Day.
I see you.
To my daughters, I want to wish them a happy International Women's Day. To my wife, a happy International Bully Day.
Oh, Jesus.
Bully. Anyway, keep going. What's your thought?
No, I was just saying. And yesterday was International Women's Day.
This was just a blanket statement. So here's what I want to do. Since how yesterday was International Women's Day, I think it would be appropriate if we were to discuss. I mentioned your mom. I mentioned my stepmom. There's my mom. She passed away several years ago. I think we should talk about how women have shaped.
Who run the world? Oh, girls.
I think women.
Sorry.
We should discuss how women have shaped our relationship. How the influence of certain women in our lives have actually formed the basis, the foundation of how we structure our relationship and how we model our marriage.
Okay, go ahead, start.
You start.
I just told you to start.
Anyway.
It's Women's Day. You do what I say.
Well, that was yesterday.
Mister?
That was yesterday. So I will say this, that my mom about 50-something years ago gave birth to what we thought was the second coming of Jesus. But as it turns out, I was not. I ended up being more like the distant cousin of the devil. I was...
distant cousin.
Of the devil.
No, second cousins.
No, so my parents got divorced when I was 2 years old, and so my dad, God bless him, while still trying to figure things out. I think they had me when they were 21, and which is still that's pretty young. I mean, it's not as young as some, but it's still young. And they didn't know what was going on. My dad didn't know what he was doing, and I'm not making any excuses, but he still had a lot of growing up to do. So my mom, from the time I was 2, and she was a single parent. And quite honestly, she was probably pretty much a single parent even when Dad was around. But my mom worked at the Sacramento Army Depot, and she worked there for many, many, many years. And when she was there, she basically broke her back to make sure that I went to good schools. Her whole thing was, you're going to get a good education, even if we got to beat it into you. And somehow or another, she and the nuns conspired to beat it into me. And I went to private Catholic schools from first grade all the way through high school. And you take a lot of things for granted until you're older. And I think, I know that the level of sacrifice that my mom put in for me was amazing. And you look back at all the things that I was able to do growing up. We weren't rich by any means. We weren't even middle class. If anything, we were upper poor or lower middle. I don't know what you would call that.
Right.
But it was one of those things where the house was always clean. There were no infestations. There were no cockroaches. There was nothing crazy. One thing I remember was when we moved into our first house, there were mice. And so listen to this. So we moved into this house, and I think we were there maybe all of days, because nothing was really set up yet. They were still getting furniture. As a matter of fact, they were still bringing things over from the apartment. And my first night, spending the night in the house, I was in my room. I was so excited to sleep in my new room. And they had to go do something. And I remember they woke me up early saying, okay, when we come back, we're going to need you to come open the door for us. And I was like, okay. And I went back to bed. So then I wake up, and I'm a hard sleeper, even back then. But I wake up to, them banging on the door saying, Ernie, come open the door. As a matter of fact, my Uncle Billy came around the side of the house to where my window was on the side, because it wasn't in the backyard. It was facing our neighbors, the Gibson's house. And he tapped on the window, and he was like, nephew, go open the door. And I was like, oh, okay. I take a step out my room to go down the hallway to open up the door. And there were like 2 mice in the middle of the hallway. And I remember screaming, rat! And I ran and jumped on the bed. And Billy and my mom, they came around to the side window, tapping and yelling at me to get off the bed.
Get off the bed, go open the door.
Go open the door. I would not get off my bed. Pretty much. I was like, nah, I'll take the whipping if you can get in.
Right.
And so they were like, go look. I was crying. And I was probably, you know what? I was in the 4th grade.
That's so funny.
And I remember that because I went to St. Pat's and then had to go. Anyway, long story is, that's funny. That's my first memory of that house. And so, but she ended up getting a house. She and my stepfather. And then...
Is that one in Casa Linda?
Yeah, over in Casa Linda, over in Meadowview. And so I went there from 4th grade all the way through high school. That's my mom passed away in that house, in their master bathroom. And everything that she did, there's so much I look back on now that I had no idea her level of commitment. I think if my mother taught me nothing else, she taught me loyalty, and she taught me commitment to following through. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. And because my mom was like the queen of that. And she was very, 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 very loyal to a fault, to friends and to family, when she probably shouldn't have been in many instances. But those are the things I think I carry. Those are probably the 2 things that, and loving unconditionally, because we got some characters in our family, and she loved them unconditionally, no matter how much bad they did, no matter the craziness that they created within the family or the chaos. No matter what happened, my mom was always the mediator. She was that person. I bet my mom was one of those rare individuals that I would have to say that her S, when we're talking disc, her S had to be relatively high, and but she was also a pretty strong D, and I would say that her S and her D were the probably significant traits of her personality. Her C, not so much, because she didn't do research. She was one of those people. She was like, I make a decision, I make it now, I go. Whether it was good, bad, indifferent, she makes a decision, she moves. But she was super supportive. She was always trying to make sure that everybody was taken care of. That was like her main thing. So I would say she was a higher S than a D. And that carries over in me. I mean, the D definitely, because we butted heads. But I think she taught me to just try and be there for family. Because even in my life, I've been over backwards more times than not to try and smooth things over with certain family members that were always beefing or whatever, to the point where they would all get together and turn against me. But that is what it is. But I didn't really care. That's the high D. So I think that's what I carried over into our marriage is commitment and that loyalty piece. That's what I got from my mom. What about you?
Oh man, I got a lot from my mom. I got so kind of going back, like you said, the history.
Did you speak up a little bit?
They can hear me. The history of where I came from. So my mom and dad were married 2 months before I was born. My mom was 20, and I think my dad was like 23 or something. So they were young. Also, my dad was in the military, and so they got married, and they stayed married probably till I was 8, or maybe I was 10. But they separated, so they were separated before they got divorced. I remember my mom and dad, when I was my room was right next to their room, and my understanding of what was going on in the relationship was my mom and dad used to fight all the time. So I would hear them argue, and I would think that it was more than what it was. It sounded like,
World War III was going on.
It did. So I was always, I'd be up late or whatever. Just a whole lot that I remember as a child. My brother would be like, I don't remember none of that. It's like, well, I remember everything. But anyway, so I remember when they divorced, and my mom, she was a single mom like your mom was. And I think from her, one thing my mom always told me, and we kind of talked about this before, you take care of yourself. You don't ever rely on anyone else to take care of you, because other people will let you down. So if there's anything that you need, that you make sure that you're in a position to always take care of yourself. So that's kind of how I grew up. Like, make sure I'm not selfish or anything like that, but not really relying on other people. So whenever, and that was kind of hard too, because I think that stopped me from a lot of times when I was younger. If I needed help with something, I would never ask, just because I didn't know how to ask, number one. But I would never, it would take me forever, like days, to be like, oh God, I gotta call somebody, okay, Mom. Finally, I asked my mom, and she'd be like, well, why didn't you say something earlier? I just don't like asking you for stuff. I don't like asking for whatever. So when I was when we were living in the Bay Area, my mom, it was me and my mom, we struggled financially. We lived in an apartment, and they raised the rent like by $200. And so we struggled. And I remember I had my first job, I worked at Burger King, and then I worked there for 6 months, and then I went and I worked at McDonald's. And when I first got my checks, I didn't know what to do with them. I was like, I got a check. What am I supposed to do?
That sounds familiar.
So I would just give my mom my check. And she was like, well, we could open an account, whatever. And I was like, okay. But I would just sign the back of the check, and I would just give it to her. And my mom said, I remember we talked about, when I got older, she's like, you just don't even know how much that meant to me. She's like, because you never were selfish about, oh, it's my money, it's whatever. You just gave me your check. Like, it wasn't a big deal. And that was the thing that tied us over, that sustained us, that kept gas in the car, that kept, and, it's the Bay Area. It wasn't cheap out there.
Right.
But it was just, okay, I didn't think I did some great thing or whatever. I was just, oh, here's mom, But that was always so, like, big for her. So I remember when we lived in Sacramento. I grew up in Sacramento until I was 11. And then we moved to the Bay Area. I did not want to move. I did not want to move. And so she was like, well, we're moving, blah, 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 whatever. I was like, I don't want to go. And she's like, where you going? And where are you going to stay? And I was like, I can stay with grandma and grandpa. She's like, no, we're moving. So the day we moved, we were putting our stuff in the car. And my brother was with, like, my uncles or whoever. They were in a different car. I was in the car with my mom. And we had the back of the car piled up. And I was sitting in the front seat of the car. And my mom was driving. And I'm looking out the window sideways because I didn't want her to see me crying. And, oh my God. She called my name and she turned the music down and she called my name and she said, what's the matter? And I just looked at her and tears were coming out my eyes and I didn't say anything. And she just looked kind of like chest falling, like, not in a bad, like, she knew I was upset.
Right.
So she said, why are you crying? I said, because I don't want to leave. And then I started crying for real. And so she says, Rana, she said, look, I know you don't want to go, but where would you stay? I said, I could stay with grandma and grandpa. And she just was quiet. She was driving. She said, I'm your mother. And your place is with me. You belong with me. But the way that she said it, because my mom is no nonsense. We call her no nonsense Linda. She don't put up with no mess. Not in a bad way, like she'll cuss you out. She's one of those kind of people where my mom could tell you off and you would just be like, whoa, you feel like you're an inch big. But the way in her telling you off, she would never raise her voice. She would never say a cuss word. Her tone would just be stern. But she's like one of those, you do not want to disappoint her. And if there's disappointment, that weighs heavy on you, on your heart, All she has to do is say, I'm really disappointed. And all my cousins they be like, oh, don't upset Auntie Linda. Don't tell Auntie Linda, because not that she's like the saint of the family, but, my mom is like a rock. So with my grandpa, 1982. So we moved, that was a touching moment for us. As far as that was like just one of the things that really stands out about something that is like, there was like almost a transition because my mom was always, do what I say and do it now. You don't ask questions. You just do what she says. She doesn't tell you twice. But for her it's like, I felt like she explained to me why I couldn't stay. It wasn't just oh girl, you just gonna come. My mom, it was never anything like that. And that's, like I said, that stands out to me because it was such a tender moment with us. It was almost like a shifting of sorts. It sounds very plain, like, oh, it doesn't matter. But there was something that changed because I was really like the first time she ever really explained anything to me, and in the way that she explained it, So she showed her compassion. My mom's very compassionate, but she's also about her business, If we were doing an assessment, my mom, I feel like my mom is, she's a D for sure, because she's like get it done, and we need to make sure it's taken care of. She's a high C because she's very organized, and everything needs to be, But then again, she's a nurturer, so I mean,
Yeah,
she's
just
just high, whatever. I don't know.
Her eye is non-existent, but
What?
her eye.
Yes, it is.
No, she's not the one. I mean, she'll do it, but it's not as it needs to be out front and hold the microphone.
Oh,
She will
okay.
reluctantly.
Well,
she
I
can't
mean,
get
I
anybody
don't
else
think
to do
that just means you're an eye. If you're
No.
like, anyway. So, she's always been the one to take care of things and of people. When we moved out of town, whenever my grandma needed something, it was my mom who would come back in town and make sure that everything is handled and taken care of. Okay, so 1982, my grandma lost her grandmother. So my grandma's grandmother raised her. Did I tell you about my grandma, her mom? My grandmother's mother was killed by the KKK. And her mom, before she died, she hid my grandmother and my Uncle Robert in a field. And she was, I don't know, she was killed. So grandma's dad, Grandpa Henry, he had to go find them. So found them or whatever. So great grandma Sally raised grandma as her, So in 1982, August 8th, my great grandma Sally died. Grandma's mom died. And my mom came down from the Bay Area, and I was so worried about my grandma because I was just like, her mom died, because I know that I would be devastated if my mom, And so I was just like, the whole day we were at church, and grandma was keeping it together, and it was like the minute she kind of broke down, my mom walked through the door. So it was like my mom was right there, like when grandma needed her, And so the next day they flew out to Texas to bury grandma and take care of all her, Grandma Sally, take care of all her business and everything. So they left like August 9th. They came back the week of August 20th. I think that was maybe the 15th or whatever. So that was on that Monday. Grandma came home on Monday, and that Friday my grandpa died. So my grandma lost her mom, and she lost her husband in the span of 12 days. And my mom was like, when I say my mom is like the rock, my mom is the rock. Because my mom was like, okay, we're doing this, da-da-da-da-da. She handled everything, not like by herself and no one else did anything, but it was always, everything was deferred to Linda. Well, what did Linda say? Well, Linda, call Linda. Well, and that's still how it is today. Well, call Linda and ask Linda what. Okay, well, did you ask Linda? Everything is Linda, and that's how it was. That's she. Oh.
Oh, sorry. Linda. Listen, Linda. Listen. That's all I can think about right now. Sorry, go ahead.
But you know how that is. I mean, so after my grandpa died, I mean, it was like my mom, my mom made sure everything was handled. My mom made sure my grandma, even when she still lived out of town, she would come, she would call, whatever it was my mom. So, and it wasn't just us. Well, my grandma and whatever, everyone in my family. I mean, sometimes people call, and I get so upset because I'm like, why are you calling my mama?
Okay, but so?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just talking about my mother.
I know. I was like, we were talking about how what was it about them that helped? So what traits from your mom, or what did she teach you that you brought into our relationship?
I take care of everyone.
But according to you, that's what every woman does.
Not the way I do it. No. My mom taught me love. She taught me compassion. She taught me to see past with the exterior. Everything is not as it seems. I learned that from my mother. Everything is not as it seems. So dig deeper to find out what's really going on, because there's always an underlying something, a reason why. I learned that from my mom. I learned to be compassionate, to take care of others. So, and to be loving. Still struggling with that one.
No, I'd say you're loving in your own kind of way.
I was just joking.
No, it's just one of those things where I think that the women in our lives need to be celebrated, because there's so many different negative things that are going on in society that for whatever reason, it seems like it's even just constructed or built to tear the women down. Even from a patriarchy or a patriarchal type of society that we live in, everything's the man, everything's this, and the man's a protector. And I know that some people say, "Oh, well, some of that's biblical." I get that, but it just seems like for instance, today I had a conversation with a coworker, and it was crazy how it came up. But there was something that she said about this guy, and she's a Caucasian female, and she was like, "This just makes me mad. This guy that I went in to go talk to was it was like an old white guy." And I'm thinking to myself, okay, but you're white, but the way she was talking, she was angry, and to add fuel, you know how I do, so adding fuel to the fire. And I was like, yeah, I go, it's him and his compatriots that are even making choices about your body and what you can and can't do. Man, she went through the roof. And it was funny. She said, "Oh, don't even get me started on that." And I say that because there is a perception out there, and I think it's more than a perception, that men have a tendency to try and run everything, and they like to maintain control. And I think that
that's a perception,
right? But it's one of those things where, for whatever reason, women are always cast as the weaker sex, not as the other sex or the opposite sex at times, from male. But it's just like the weaker, and I've never bought into that, because I guess I've had nothing but strong women in my life.
Well, I mean, the only thing that makes sense about the weaker is the body structure. That's the only thing that makes sense, because your muscles get bigger than ours. That's it. I mean, and unless I worked out I feel like even if I did work out like that,
bone density's different.
I've seen some bodybuilder women that I'm like, dang. But I mean, I'm just saying that's the only thing that I say as far as we're the weaker sex. Maybe because, obviously, like you said, bone density and muscle mass and that kind of thing. And then we have a more emotional component to us. Most females do, because there are some females who are built like men. I mean, and then there are some men that have the emotional capacity of a woman, and that's okay. I think that's great, but that's the only thing that I see as far as historically, women were not out in the field and towing and doing that type of stuff. That may be why. I'm gonna say that may be why, but I'm just saying that's what I look at when people always say they refer to women as the weaker sex. It's like, no, we're the stronger ones. We carry all of this on our own backs.
Well, you look at the African American community. When you look at the civil rights movement, all the things that transpired, what you see at the very front of the civil rights movement, when people talk about it or make reference to it, they'll talk about Malcolm X doing it a certain way. They'll talk about Dr. Martin Luther King doing it a certain way. But then they'll also mention like Andrew Young. They'll mention Jesse Jackson. They'll talk about all these different people that are at the forefront, but there's always the men. The only woman that you ever hear them really reference, more times than not, is Rosa Parks. But don't get it twisted. The civil rights movement was built on the backs of women, because it was the women that actually were the ones that were in the church. There were men that were in the church, but it was really the women that were there, that were running, that were doing all these things, that were really at the forefront of everything that we did. Women in our community, and when you look at women's suffrage, when you look at all these different things that take place, look, let's just keep it real. Let's take it all the way back. If it was up to the male species
baby.
to bore children, dinosaurs would be running this podcast right now. Because they're like, wait, excuse me? What's got to come out of what? Oh, well, hey, you know what? We might as well, look, what was the thing? YOLO? You only live once? Yeah, we all only gonna live once because
That's it.
that's it. It ain't going past this.
That's funny.
So nah, homie, I'm sorry. That's it. But I think that's the truth. I think that's one of those things that people forget about when it comes to, what it truly means to be strong, if you will. And I think yesterday, there should be more celebrations, International Women's Day. It should be more celebrations on women and their contributions to the world. There's more to a woman than birthing babies and cooking and cleaning and all that. I mean, and we have these societal constraints, and we talked about roles before, role reversal, this, that, and the other. What's the role in a relationship, and what are your thoughts? And there was some interesting feedback that we got, but women, I think, need to be celebrated more than what they are.
Well, I agree with that, but it's not. I feel like it's more the Western civilization that has.
I disagree.
You disagree? What? You didn't even let me get it out.
The Western civilization that has really portrayed women as being the weaker.
No, that celebrate women more. It's the other countries and stuff that where women are. It's almost like I feel like they're not so much invisible, but it's more the man.
Well, think about it. Women in certain Middle Eastern countries aren't even allowed to drive.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, even though it's International Women's Day, because a lot of those women that they go through what I call as abuse, they live in that type of life and they survive. I couldn't. Well, of course I say that now, coming where I'm from. If I had to live in that type of environment, I feel like that's hostile, whatever. But that's just me.
No, but
somebody
you're right.
else may not feel that way.
Well, it's only because they don't have a vantage point. They don't have perspective. Let's call it what it is. Okay, so women in Iran couldn't drive. Women in other Middle Eastern countries, can't be seen, and that could be some of it could be due to the religion, but some of the other things that certain jobs can't be held by women. Mm-hmm. You've got women are looked down upon in India for a good portion of it. Then you have another over in China for the longest period. If you had a female baby, that was looked down upon, and there were measures that were put in place to limit not just children but how many females. You even got a story that look, March 23rd or 27th, the Disney film Mulan is coming out, and the whole premise for Mulan is that there was a war that was impending that was coming, and the dad needed the generals came around to this great warrior and said, "We need your son." He said, "I have no sons." So he was supposed to go support and because every family had to have a man step up and fight in the war, and he only had daughters, and he was looked down upon, even at that point, like, too bad or whatever. It was a negative thing. There's so many different cultures in Africa, in certain countries within Africa. You actually had the genital mutilation that was taking place, and it's still controversial. So there's so many different things that were beating women down that I think that there should be time spent on really celebrating and highlighting not just their contributions, but their value, their worth. Let them know that women are
more
valued.
than just baby makers or producers or whatever.
Right, exactly. So anyway, that's why I just thought that when you brought up International Women's Day, that I thought it would be cool to kind of talk about our moms. We didn't even get into our grandparents, really. You talked about Grandma Jill a little bit.
Finish talking about my mom. So.
Well, no. We were 39 minutes in, and I'm sure people are wondering, what was the drive like when you drove from Sacramento to the Bay Area?
Really?
Just giving you a hard time.
That was a touching moment for me.
I know.
Obviously, because I still remember it.
Absolutely.
I remember a lot of touching moments with my mom.
You are a high C. You remember all the moments, touching or not. You look, everybody peeped out how he was like, it was June 17th, 1982. The sky was overcast.
Okay.
And
No.
I don't need the explanation. I don't need an explanation. I'm just saying that I know that I will continue to lose every argument because you remember every detail. No, I remember because that day you had on those particular songs.
Oh my God.
So
it's almost like it's visual.
We're gonna move on.
Whatever.
We're 40 minutes in.
It's nothing wrong with that. People enjoy our podcast.
And they enjoy Two for the Road.
I'll have my own podcast. Maybe I'll do that.
You should.
Have my own podcast?
You should.
Call it Snooks Way.
Snooks Way. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna have a podcast where it's just gonna be all you. You're gonna be able to. It's gonna be Rana's rant.
Really?
And you're gonna get to
My
talk about
rant?
whatever you want for the entire podcast. You won't even hear my voice. But right now we're gonna have Two for the Road.
Wait, no. I can't let you do it. You might put that meter dome thing on again.
Wait.
What was that called? Metrodome?
Metronome.
Yeah. Never had it before. All of a sudden
Anyway,
on my interview.
I haven't had it since.
Exactly.
So mine says I can wash her car.
Mine says I can give my partner more attention. Not.
Wait, why you gonna throw it back in?
Oh, sorry.
You just threw it away? Wow.
Wait.
No.
I got the wrong one.
See? So I will wash your car. Ooh, it's gonna rain.
Oh, Lovey never. Lovey, how many times have you washed my car?
Several times. Me personally?
Lovey.
Or me taking it to get washed?
How many times?
I don't know. Apparently not enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she's not gonna remember.
I will
What
remember.
did I say? What did you say?
That was mine.
What did it say
I
for you?
can give my partner more attention.
More attention.
That means I
We
can
will
talk
check
to you
in
more.
midweek. Let you know how it's going.
That means I can talk to you more.
When I want you to, you know. Hey, look, I know that maybe this is a little bit longer than normal, and it
It's
wasn't
okay.
it wasn't our traditional podcast, but you know, here's the thing. Look at your relationship, the good, the bad, the ugly, because every relationship has each one of those components to it, you know, to a certain extent. But look at where you are in your relationship, and take a moment to reflect on how your mother or your grandmother, who was that influential woman in your life that helped form the basis for how you live your relationship with your significant other? Are there any positives there? Are there some, I don't call them negatives, but were there some learning moments? Because we can do one of two things. We can either say, I want to fashion my relationship, or I want to incorporate this in my relationship. Or the second thing is you can be like, I want to make sure my relationship looks nothing like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to get a chance to go into that part.
Ooh.
It's because we both have those. As strong as our mothers were, I mean, there were times in their lives, just like ours, where you want to make sure that I don't want that to be reflected in my relationship when I grow up and, you know, become a wife or become a husband. What?
Nothing.
So anyway,
I'm engaging with my audience.
Okay. So with that said, until the next time, be blessed.
Bye-bye.